Hi, this is Ed. I'm in San Diego. You could see down there on the map, and on the lower left, my lower left. And this is an illustration from infographics and some other teams. Uh, we're going to be talking about teams and where are your teams located and how do you communicate with them? We have some experts, and we'll be right back with that program. Stay tuned. Thank you. And we're joined now. The first of our guests are arriving. PhilipBerry has entered the studio. Hold on. Hello, Philip. Cheers. Good morning.
Good morning. Were you?
We
Oh,
are recording now on
great.
purpose and to start the ball rolling. This is a chart that I found. I forget the name of the company. They do all these illustrations. Infographics is one company, but this is another one. And
Mm,
this is Tech Talent and where it's located according to them.
mm,
Um, I don't know what Miami Fort Lauderdale is, but I'll look it up and let you know. But the topic is teams, and I have your questions, and we should have a pretty good audience for this, uh, and for the streaming version, for the recorded version. Not sure. This being Friday, who's going to show up other than you and me and the people who say they want to show up. So I like your picture in the background. That's very clean and modern and upscale.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank you. Thank you. I have a hard stop at 12 because I
Yeah.
have another
So
meeting. I have to
uh,
prepare something for a 1 o'clock. So
okay, we'll get you on first after the intros, and then you
mm,
could depart if you wish or stay.
okay.
Good. So what are you doing this weekend?
Is it weekend already?
Oh, no, in a couple hours. Yeah.
I'm going to just the weather is nice, so but I'm just going to hang low, hang loose, hang low.
Yeah. So do you go for walks on the by the river or by the ocean?
Yeah, it's right by the river is right outside my building.
Yeah. So do you have a boat?
No, no, it's
Could
too
you
expensive.
just take a ride when you want it without all the burden?
Yeah, I can go across the river and I can walk across the bridge. Bridge is right, it's this low bridge over here, and I can just walk across the bridge, or I can take uh, what they call a water taxi ride
Right, right.
right
So
across.
where do you go to the bar, the best looking bar on the river?
No, I can lots of eating places along the way. You're right about that.
I bet. I
Yeah,
bet. And we're
and
joined by
I
Dr.
can,
Ken Lloyd.
I can
Welcome.
also go down to I can take the water taxi down to I mean, it's like Venice, like, you just
Yeah.
right outside my building, and then there's the taxi, what they call the water taxi there. So it takes me on the other side of the river or takes me down to the beach area.
So, but it's not like Venice with when they have vaporettos going back and forth all the time.
No, yeah, no, up and down the river is a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that's on
Yeah.
here. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's been years since I've been there. We
Oh.
used to do an annual meeting in Fort Lauderdale in the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the hotel. It was like a three-star hotel next to the five-star places, but the three-star was just great.
Yeah, there's a Hilton
Relatively
there.
affordable.
Yeah, there's a Hilton there right by the river. There's a Marriott, but all along the way, wonderful eateries here.
Yeah, great. So, Ken, what are you going to do later today and this weekend? Anything special? And going to hang out with your granddaughter?
Actually, yeah, I'll head over there and do a little hanging out with her. And other than that, pretty much wide open. We have the other side of the family, the other in-laws in, and they're super nice people. Went out to dinner with them last night. And, well, yeah, very much family oriented for the next couple of days. So thank you.
Is the
That's
weather nice
nice.
over there, Ken?
Sorry?
Is the weather nice?
It's overcast now. It's about 62, 63 outside, something like that. What about for you?
No, it's about 70s up to
Yeah,
80.
nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah. Hey, Christian, how you doing?
How are you?
Good.
Hi,
Welcome.
Hello, good to see
Welcome.
you, Philip. Good to see you, Ken.
hi,
You
Ed.
too.
Good. Okay. Now, the background, as you could see, is a map of the U.S. and the blue dots, and the writing refers to tech, not number of tech workers. In other words, where are teams located? And as you might suspect, the Northeast and California and Seattle are giant in terms of location of tech companies, of course.
And
Okay.
Texas is behind your back.
Yeah, well, they don't have my back, I'll tell you that.
I teed that up, didn't
Yeah, that's
I?
very good. I'm glad this is my second cup of coffee.
Mhm.
Firing on all cylinders here.
Well, for the next few minutes anyway. Yeah, well, the sun is out today in San Diego Seaport Village. The first time in a week. So, uh, so it's great to see. We'll head out to go for a walk on Harbor Island or Shelter Island here in San Diego Bay later today. Here's
Steven's
Stephen
here.
Howard. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi.
Yeah, we are recording, and behind me is a map of
Hey,
a
Steve.
visualization of tech workers around the U.S. As you could see, I don't know how many are in Phoenix, but I know with the Chip Science Act, that number will certainly grow as Intel and the Taiwan manufacturing company ramp up. Have you had any contact, because you're in Phoenix, have you had any contact with Intel or the Taiwan or the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development people?
No, not yet. It's something I'll do later, probably later in the year or early next year.
I can make an intro if you need it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, I used to publish years ago. I published Arizona bound relocation guide, just like California bound or New York
Hmm.
bound, Florida bound, Texas bound, Chicago bound.
Mhm.
They
I was
need that
thinking,
as all the people
well,
moving.
I was thinking, well, with the internet came along, it sort of just stopped my progress, and then I just got into the live conference business full time, and had to learn how to do internet. Much like I had a crash learning 4.5 years ago doing TV talk shows when COVID wiped out my 30 years of live conference revenue.
Yeah.
Oh well, here we are. Survival. So, Ken, we are recording, trying to make this as conversational as possible within this stilted environment. But um, when you were faced with setbacks, if you've ever had them, in your business, do you want to talk about just a linchpin? What was one thing that got you going again, or in a different, new direction, a rediscovery, a rebirth, if you will?
Well, that's a good question. I did make a career change, not so much that it was a setback, but it was a dramatic change when I decided to leave consulting and join one of my clients. And I guess what I was seeing in consulting was sort of almost like a kind of date myself, but kind of the long ranger syndrome where you go in and you do some work and make some changes and leave the silver bullet behind. And who was that guy? Because some of the projects, some were long term, some were repeat, and others you kind of do stuff, but I didn't get all the follow up that I had, and that I would have liked to have had. That was a little bit dissatisfying. and I kind of like to build longer term relationships. I thought it'd be interesting to make a real career change. So I did. One of my clients said, "You ever think about joining a client?" And I did so, and it was just a great move. Made tons of friendships. Got to be an internal consultant. Got to implement all sorts of new programs. But it was a gear shift, definitely. And but as you know, we've talked about in various ways, to be willing to change, upgrade, rebrand, look at ourselves in different lights, continue our learning and development and growth. So that was really how I focused it. And I would do the same with a setback. All right, what am I going to learn from this? Because this has been different from what I planned, different from what I anticipated. Do I want to try to be resilient and upbeat and positive and look at this as an opportunity? Or do I just want to say, oh, I'm slammed down and now I'm stuck? I would, for myself, try to approach it from the standpoint of, all right, what can I do as a next step to make this happen? One thing that we said about people with a PhD, they might or might not be smart. Who the heck knows? But I'll tell you this, we're persistent, okay? And you just keep chipping away, and that's the same attitude that I had. I will keep pushing to the various goals that I set. So long answer to a short question, but that's sort of the big picture.
So, Steven, when you write books for yourself or for a client, or let's just keep it at that for now. Is each client unique? I mean, I think they are, of course, because everyone's unique. But or do you just apply the same situations that plug into that client's personality and needs?
Kind of combination of both, I think. For instance, I've got, because of my international experience, a lot of stories that interest people. Like told the story the other day about negotiating with the Koreans. Now I could tell that same story about negotiation. I could talk to it about partnering with somebody. I could tell that story of how it leads to communications or miscommunications or risk-taking. There's various elements of that story I can highlight all with one story. So I think that's one of the things I try to do is illustrate whatever somebody needs to understand the point. I find a lot of the people, particularly younger generation today, are more visual learners. And if I tell the story, they get the concept. But if I just give them, here's the model for how you do feedback. You do this, A, then B, and then C, then D, and E, and F, and blah, blah, blah. They kind of say, okay, that's interesting, but they feel like it's tying their hands. But if I can tell a story of how the model works, and if you skip a step, how it misfires, then they get it.
I agree with
Christian.
that. I completely agree with that. I kind of figured that out by myself, that if you want to train people, one of the best ways to do it is with stories. And then definitely, just like Steven said, you always want to point out what works and what didn't work, what mistakes you made. You want to make it clear that you're not the know-it-all. You've been there, and you care enough about the other person to tell them what mistakes not to make. And I found that resonates the best with people.
It's interesting in studying salespeople, which I did over the years, doing research on persuasion, sales strategies and tactics. Some of the most effective salespeople always include stories in their presentation. Yeah. They're visual, they're memorable, and they can certainly put messages in a story that you can't put in a direct communication with a customer. For example, you can't say to a customer, "You're crazy if you don't buy this." But suddenly, if it's in a story, and then when the salesperson said, "You're crazy if you don't buy this," suddenly that message has come out, but it's done in a different way. It's very interesting to see how stories are used. But you think about it, whether you're in a religious setting and it's a preacher or a rabbi giving a sermon, the stories. And frankly, if you say, "Well, let me tell you a story about that," that's kind of interesting. Mine is when we were younger, we had stories read to us. We like that. It sets a very positive mindset as well and makes it that much more acceptable. So stories are absolutely terrific to include. It's just part of the educational process, as well as just in overall communications and persuasion.
Okay, Christian, when you told me a story, you told us a story about you selling cars. So here you are, an immigrant, and you're trying to acclimate into the U.S. as much as possible. Uh, So was that a purposeful move, or did you just sort of fall into it?
Well, it was a little bit of both. The falling into it part was 9/11. We had 9/11 happened exactly a year and 2 days after we moved. So we
Mm.
hadn't gotten very far at that point, career-wise, my wife Erin and I, and then we weren't quite married yet. But we hadn't gotten very far. And after 9/11, well, 9/11 was when the dot-com industry fell apart, first of all. And some of my experience, both in Switzerland and the first jobs in the US, were in the dot-com industry. And, I didn't have a network. I didn't have a whole lot. And there weren't a whole lot of jobs out there. And what was out there, because it's always out there, is car salesmen wanted. It's one of these jobs that will always be available because people don't really want to do them, and turnover is absurdly high. And I thought, well, I like cars, so let's try that. And I talk a lot about it because it was such a great learning experience. Talk about a setback, right? I mean, my parents were, of course, shocked, if not disgusted, by this European, very old, educated man who's very old, in a very old-fashioned way, Latin, ancient Greek, has a master's degree and is now selling cars. I mean, they were like, okay, you're a complete screw up. But they didn't say it quite like that, but that was a gist.
Yeah,
But
throw away your life, huh?
yeah, kind of. But
I I got that from my dad at one time.
I know. I'm sure you can relate. So, but it was a very good experience because it forced me to really be in the middle of it, to get out of my ivory tower, which I'd already gotten out of it quite a bit, but get out of my ivory tower, really dig in, deal with people, customer service, all kinds of people. And then, as I believe I talked about in that story, learn about how Americans handle money. Um, and it was a crash course in talk about what not to do. I mean, you don't really learn faster about what a good credit score does than when you sell cars. All this in Switzerland, there was no such thing as a credit score. You paid your debts. Credit cards were like American Express. You had to pay them off each month, or the machine would just eat the credit card. It was you didn't have debt. If you had debt, it was almost like loan sharking, semi-legal loan sharking. It was very, very, very disgusting, very like, you don't do that, immoral. And learning that, everybody is way in debt, and it's Irvine, like South Orange County, right? Cars are a major, major status symbol, whether you can afford them or not. That was quite an awakening for me. And that's why I still talk about it 22 years later.
Want to welcome Anna to the talk show. Welcome, Anna. And when you're ready, join us. I'll make introductions. We're going to get to PhilipBerry and a unique presentation for discussion purposes in just a couple of minutes. We're going to have a hard close at the top of the hour, so we don't want to waste the opportunity here to get ourselves oriented. One of the themes here is a group of people like this. Here we are, a group. We're not in the same company, but we've been together so many times, and I thank you on this program across the few years. We're sort of functioning as a team, but we're loosey-goosey. And that's my style on purpose, so that I don't feel hemmed in or uncreative. If I'm forced to be in a box, I go crazy and I want to break out, mentally at least, if not physically. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to ask Philip a question. Anna, I welcome you to join. We're going to be joined by at least one other who's on the way. Oh, we're going to go forward. So I'm going to read this. A group of people who meet, or even a department that meets, is not a team unless they go through a set of strategies that develop them into a team. Philip, when is a group of people or a department a team?
Well, you know, that quote, I well remember it because I gave it to you. I mean, you know,
I'm a puppet, you know. So.
no, but, you know, but this is the thing. So
Strings.
everybody, we're so much into using this word team. You know, it's like the word of the day, and because a group is together, a group of people, you know, is together, that they have to go through a process. And I'm going to what that statement provoked me to do was to outline 7 very specific strategies that what high performing work teams should go through in order to be called a team. And they're very specific, you know, and that's something that I can, you know, I'll talk about it, you know, as you want me to get into it, but certainly there are a number of people who feel that because they're in the same department, and you can see that because they haven't gone through some of these particular strategic elements, you can see how their work process is falling apart. You could see that they're not productive, you know, because of them not taking the time to go through certain steps that really mold them into what I would call a high performance work team.
Comments, Ken?
Just saying that this absolutely makes terrific sense. I mean, a bunch of people standing at a intersection waiting to cross the street, that's not a team. I mean, it's a bunch of people who are all there. But if we're really going to talk about teams, there are key factors in terms of alignment and goals and set strategies and so forth, and communication. It's very, very different. So I think that's an important distinction, because it's easy for managers and employees to think, well, I got a bunch of coworkers and we call ourselves a team. That word is thrown around all over the place. It's not a team at all. It's just an entity of individuals, which is fine, it's nice, but it's not a team. And I totally agree with the approach that Philip is introducing right at this point.
Steven?
Yeah, I think this is this concept of team is one of the things that causes a lot of frustration in the workplace. In that, if you're the leader of the team, you always have team meetings, and you end up having people in the meeting who are just bored to tears because what's being discussed has absolutely nothing to do with their responsibilities, their work, their deadlines. When I led the marketing at Citibank in Singapore, I had brand managers. I had a brand manager for car insurance products and another brand manager for investment products. Well, we had 2 different customer bases. One was for the car. Most of our car insurance was sold through car dealerships, through people like Christian. People didn't buy insurance directly from the bank. They bought it as part of the package when they purchased a car in Singapore. So what we were talking about with that brand manager had nothing to do with the brand manager who was focusing on our high net worth private investor database. So, and so if I had meetings with them both in the same meeting, it was a waste of time. I remember coaching a sales leader in Singapore who had regional responsibilities: Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, what am I missing? Malaysia and Singapore. And he had a monthly meeting. He flew these people to Singapore every month for a 1-day meeting. And for the first half of the meeting, the Philippine person would present what's happening in the Philippines, which had no relevance to the people in Malaysia or Indonesia. And then the Indonesia guy would present his what's going on. And I told him, you know, you're wasting money and you're wasting people's time with a wasted meeting. So he changed his strategy. So sorry, Christian, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. So whenever I had that happen, one of the things I learned to question is this meeting really about the meeting and what we're discussing, or is it about the fact that I have the power to fly you in, and I have the power to make you come in, you know, and listen to something that is of absolutely no interest or consequence to you just because I can. And in case you're doubting my power and that I can do it, you know what? I'm going to do it again next month. I've had a lot of meetings where I was pretty sure it wasn't about the meeting at all. It was about the act of getting everybody together for maybe power reasons, maybe team building reasons, maybe both. But very often it wasn't about what was being discussed.
Want to introduce Anna? Welcome, my friend. Tell us who you are, much better than I could at this moment.
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry for being a little bit late.
No problem.
So, AnaMonsalve, I am the Talent Mobility Senior Manager for Kearney Management Consulting. I had previously worked in oil and gas for many years. So had been with the industry in global mobility for about 30 years altogether. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. So Kearney is a good one for you.
Yes, definitely. It's been 2.5 fantastic years. Yes.
Yeah, I remember when you were in transition and
Yeah.
you found that opportunity. So welcome back.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Okay, so I want to introduce PhilipBerry. Philip and I have known each other more than 25 years. He's got background with Digital Equipment Corporation and IBM and Procter & Gamble. It's not that he can't hold a job, but he's really in demand. And he keeps getting these great jobs. And currently he's in his own consultancy because he's, again, in demand by a lot of people. But he and I met when he was global HR, global in charge of people and I guess operations to some extent in 60 countries with Colgate-Palmolive. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to lead us in a thinking process here, a discussion about what makes a team.
Okay, let me share my screen. And I can share this. Let's see. I have another piece I'm going to do with sound. Let's see if it works on this. I didn't do a test ahead of time, but let's see.
Okay.
Let's see if this works. And I have like maybe just 6 slides, but I'm going to cover a number of points in each of these. So, for example, when Ed, when you first brought up the thought of teams and effectiveness, what came to my mind is a concept that I've been working with for a number of years, which I call working with high-performing work teams. And high-performing work teams are different than just a group of people that come together. And there are 7 practices that these teams have to go through. And so that way you can see how they are beginning to enroll themselves in a process that provokes more clarity, more purpose, a sense of mission, and also shared values. I mean, one of the things that we have in many organizations is that you have a number of people who come together, but they don't have the same mission. And this is what I'm talking about. Every organization has its own mission statement, but then when you can bring together people from, say, different departments, different regions of the world, and then they come together and then they say, we are going to work on this particular goal. This is what our project is. And this is what we share from the standpoint of wanting to accomplish certain goals. And that's what I call a sense of purpose, as opposed to people who just come in the meeting and then they're faced with a particular topic and then they try to solve that topic, but then they don't start out by trying to get an understanding of how this is something that's shared. And one of the ways that one provokes this is, and I use the word provoke in a very positive manner, is by having transparent communication, where there's active listening that's taking place, where people are able to share their feelings and their conflicts. Those are surfaced, because many times when organizations go through a process. They don't surface those type of issues and concerns that they have. And that's one of the things that's really important. And that they have a way of surfacing this in a way that makes them productive as they go through each of their meetings. So the meetings really becomes a subset of how the team is functioning. And furthermore, they have to have a built level of trust and mutual respect. And isn't that something? Because you get people who come together and they say, well, we're working on this particular project together. They have different goals in place. They don't trust each other. They don't respect each other. They don't like each other. And so there's a process that those individuals need to go through, so that way they build trust, and so that they can build a level of belief in each other and helping each other and working each other, and a feeling that we together, not me, not I, but we together can accomplish what we set out to do from the standpoint of the mission and purpose that we outline. And furthermore, it's an area, when you get into this area of what I call shared leadership, it's an area where the person who is the lead of the team happens to be whoever happens to be in charge of that particular project at the time. And so their egos are submerged. So that way, what they share is the ability to put in place, let a person lead who happens to have maybe the best knowledge of this particular project or product at a particular time. And he or she is sharing that leadership in that time. And what happens is that it rotates. And by doing that, you're able to get everybody to shine in a way that makes them feel that they're productive. So roles are interchangeable, as opposed to this is the person who is always in charge, which some people get tired of. And in order to really make that work, that's where you get to effective working processes and procedures. And so sometimes when people are thinking about a meeting, almost in a way, the way you might have initially presented it, Ed, where people are saying, well, what's our meeting process? Are we sharing the agenda? Are we talking about that? There are a whole bunch of things like that the group has to work on. And in fact, to the extent that they don't work on those things and develop that, then they're not going to be impactful. And then what you do, you get into a point of having diversity and inclusiveness. And I'm not talking about it from the standpoint of race or gender, or I'm talking about it from the standpoint of people. Each person comes with a different understanding, a different expertise, a strength, a competency. And what you want to do is to have that being, you don't want just one homogeneous way of looking at a work product. You want to have a diversity of opinions and approaches. And what you want to do is to practice inclusiveness, so that way you're involving everybody with their thoughts, and you are sharing perspectives regarding that. And if you can get that going, then that's where you get into the seventh practice, which is what I call continuous improvement and innovation, where you're always looking at what else can we do differently? How can we continue to increase our competence level? How can we bring about a new way of approaching the market, approaching the customer, approaching our work process? I mean, and you always want to have something like that in place, so that way people feel that they are renewing themselves, and they feel that the team itself can do the impossible. So so there are a number of examples, and I'm sure a number of you would talk about examples too. But before you go into that, if you don't have these 7 practices in place, then you are not going to have what I call a team. And it could be a basketball team, it could be a football team, it could be a ballet group. I mean, I've seen this happen with mates. It could be an hourly group that's working on a machine, that's determining, they're in the warehouse and they're trying to determine what's the best way to get this product out the door. I mean, that's where you really begin to get teamwork in place. The other piece that has to happen in order to build this, and I'll go to the next slide on this, is that to understand that organizations, and that is, and I look at a team as an organizational entity. To not get too technical with it, an open system is a system that has shared goals and it expresses itself and is able to seek new information and grow as a result of the inputs that it is getting. And so when a group of people first come together, they go through 6 stages, potentially. You know, one is a point of very enthusiasm at the startup point, where they begin to develop and create the type of plans that are necessary after they've set up a mission statement. And then they move to a point, if they're operating fully, to a point of peak performance where they are having great impact on the problem that they had. The problem, unfortunately, that we have is that many organizational entities, teams, i.e. teams, go through a point of fatigue and slippage. And ultimately, when they're doing that, they need to diagnose what is happening, why is this going on? And if they don't really do that type of analysis of themselves, then they're going to go to a point of dormancy, where members don't come to meetings anymore. They don't contribute anymore. They don't feel they have anything to say. They feel everything is a waste of time. You know, so if they can do an analysis of themselves, they can go to a point of rejuvenation and restructuring, which has to do with going back to the mission statement again. Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? What were we intended to do? Is this the right group? Are these the right members? Those are the type of things that fall into place. So that's, I just wanted to say that, you know, there's a lot more that can be said about all of that, but what you always want to do with the team is that you want to create opportunities for success. Find a new mountain to climb, a new product to get out the door, a new service that you want to offer, a new challenge, a problem that is a challenge that creates an opportunity for you to rebrand themselves and show how wonderful you can be with the external entities that you're dealing with. And you do this by going back to, for example, especially the second principle of connecting and communicating. And it might be that you're connecting and communicating with other people who aren't involved in your process. So that's mostly what I want to say about this, except I'm going to say one other thing, and let's see if this connects.
That's wonderful. Okay, I need to ask you, Philip, about that block back there in that organization chart that we looked at, dormancy. So does this mean like you're cooking pasta and the sauce and you just turn down the flame and it simmers for a while to get the taste up? Is that what you mean by dormancy?
No, dormancy is that people just stop identifying as members of this particular team. Dormancy is that it doesn't exist anymore. The entity that you originally created is non-existent. You know, so it's dying. Like there's a whole statement in physics that organizations go through a process of entropy. You know, they grow, you know, and then they die. What you have to do is that you have to introduce what I call negative entropy. So that way you don't have disorganization or death. You have new purpose, new light, new meaning. And that's, so dormancy is when, and that's one of the problems that a lot of groups have. And I can look at a number of organizations that are going through a point of dormancy. you know, like this, I call this stages of organizational development, because any organizational entity, you know, a department, a family, a company, all of those are organizational entities. And they will go through this type of process unless they go through another process that revitalizes them. And what I call that is introducing negative entropy.
One way to remember it is dormancy. French dormir means to sleep. So when people fall asleep at meetings, or they don't show up because they're still in bed, that would be the way I would remember it. Then you have dormancy.
Yeah, I think in the recent times, we have also heard the term checking out. So even though you are physically present, your mind and definitely your emotion and your engagement is already gone. So I think that that's another, you know, example.
Ken?
Just unmute there. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of look at it as, in addition to stages of organizational development, I also see kind of life cycle here of teams. And unless we are alert and aware of what's happening among the individuals, within the individuals, we'll end up with that state of dormancy, as opposed to taking assessments of where we are, how we're doing, what's going on. Are we focused on the past? Do we need to look ahead further? What are we doing in terms of rebranding to keep this team alive, vital, focused, and moving? Because what's happening is, you know, that I see this having a movement to it, and it progresses. So the starting line, and it zips in. There's all that enthusiasm, and all of a sudden it gets kind of tired, and in a sense runs out of gas. So what are we doing here? Maybe we shouldn't even be using gas. Maybe we should be all electric. In other words, let's take a look at what's happening in terms of the composition and function and overall direction of where this team is going to keep it alive, lest we end up as a dormant entity.
So, Steven, what comes to mind is something you and I had discussion about a while back about screenwriting. In other words, building a show, getting a product displayed, setting up checkpoints along the way. I'm going to stop talking, Steven.
Yeah, I think I like what Phil has shown there. And, you know, I would encourage Phil to take it one step further to call it organizational development in decline, because not everyone's going to make that loop back again. And that's why organizations do decline. So whereas we say people have ADD, I think organizations have ODD, you know, they have development in decline. So that's what comes to my mind here. One thing about that, the slippage stage that Philip mentioned, and I remember from my studies of Professor Tuckman and his forming, storming, norming, performing concept of teams, is that the element when somebody new joins the team. And there's two aspects of that. Somebody new joins the team, and that's an added member, or when somebody new joins the team as a replacement for someone who's left, and people on the team have expectations that that replacement is going to immediately conform and perform the way the team is. And that's one of the things that causes slippage, because when you have a new team member, you sometimes have to go all the way back to forming and building the trust with that new team member and things of that nature. So that's yeah, just very, very important. So what Philip showed me there is reminds me of it's a much more detailed version of what Tuckman came up with in the 70s or 80s, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, could you I had some music on there. Could you hear that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
wonderful.
It was,
Okay.
it was just a
I
bit loud, and
wasn't
I
sure
didn't
that would
expect
work
it.
because I didn't test it ahead of time.
Well executed. Well done.
Oh, and it woke everyone up.
Yeah.
Now Philip is establishing a new standard for this team.
Yeah, we're trying to revitalize.
I'm not showing up anymore unless I've got musical video.
And we're not dormant here. We're not
No.
sleeping. So yeah, that was great, Philip. Really nice addition to it.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
we have 15 minutes remaining, everybody. Anna, so Kearney is like McKinsey or
We're in the same boat,
Bain.
yes.
Yeah. So you're people who you are, well, you don't manage the people, but you manage the processes of making sure the people are taken care of while they're on assignment or getting them ready for assignment.
Yeah, that's right. So my team manages, we basically move people on one-way transfers these days, not the traditional assignment as we had in oil and gas or in other industries. So yeah, my team is actually responsible for the monitoring, the whole process, working closely with HR and obviously supporting our consultants and employees who are going to a new location. And we
To
also...
what?
Go ahead.
Well,
no, I was saying that we also
yeah.
obviously support, those many consultants that are constantly on the road and, on flights going across borders, supporting the different clients through different projects.
So your consultants that you're referring to, these are people making six figures.
I would imagine, yes, I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm getting to is that this is in kindergarten. So how are you and the stakeholders setting up the assignment for success?
Good question. And I think one of the very particular elements at Kearney is that we have this very kind of deep value for growing our own talent. And that includes supporting employees who, without any particular business reason, but many times driven by personal or family situations, wish or need to move to a new location. And in that scenario, we come in and we still support them just as we would if it was a business-driven decision. So obviously, the whole concept of well-being, the whole concept of growing your career with us, no matter the location, it's very important to us. And that's something where we put a lot of efforts.
So when you say one way, does that mean you're willing to lose that talent?
No, what I'm saying is if you're currently an employee in the US, but let's say that your partner or your spouse is relocating to Australia and you want to continue working for the firm, but I mean, you can no longer remain in the US, if there is an opportunity that we can offer you to come and continue join us in Australia, we will support you even with relocation elements to make that transition easier for you and to ensure that you continue in the firm rather than going to the competitors who are willing to give you a job in Australia.
Yeah, Philip, you've had a lot of experience doing that. Excuse me, Christian. Philip, when you had people going from country to country, you want to retain that talent for the most part.
Yeah, because the reason why you sent them to that country is because there was something that they not only had to contribute, but something to learn. So for example, when I remembered when I was opening up subsidiary operations throughout Eastern Europe, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, and Russia at that time. Yeah, and so I moved people from Russia, to Turkey, moved people from Turkey to Zimbabwe, moved them from Zimbabwe to Brazil. So if I have a finance person doing that, what is the critical learning element that that person would have that in common with all of those countries? It's how to understand how to operate in a high inflationary environment. So that's a skill that you don't want to lose. I mean, just as I named each of those countries there, is going to be hyperinflation, and that can be happening anywhere in the world. So how are we able to nurture the expertise of that person so that way they can be productive anywhere they're going? And then, quite frankly, what we have to do is we have to make sure that the family is enrolled. So that way they're getting something out of it also. So there are a number of other systems that people, say, in mobility have to connect with in order to ensure that success. School systems, the capital, like the markets in terms of housing, a number of things like that, that you have many times you have to create it because it didn't exist in the countries that you went into. So how are you able to partner with other people so that way you can be successful for the individual and also with the family?
Okay, Christian.
So what Anna's talking about, we had clients that did that, is a permanent self-initiated move. And one of the reasons you want to do that, apart from what Anna already said, is also that if you retain this person that is moving maybe because of their significant other, or because they just want to live in another country or have family there, you want to make sure that since they're still working for you, that they stay in compliance. So it is in your best interest, in Anna's best interest, to make sure that these people, their immigration papers are in order. They have the right work visa. They have figured out together with Anna and her team how the pension social security scheme is going to work if they go out of this system into another system. I mean, there's all these things that a person that is just moving by themselves, if they're employed for somebody, can't really figure out all by themselves. I mean, there's a significant risk there, right? In my case, when I moved, I had to figure it all out by myself too, but I wasn't beholden to anyone. I could say, all right, I'm going to set up my own retirement funds here now. And I'm going to, I have a green card. I know that I'm legal, that kind of thing.
It's interesting. We talk about teams, and what a great display of what it means to be a team is when an employee who wants to relocate for personal or family or significant other reasons, and the company doesn't just say, all right, well, goodbye, good luck, and hope you can find something else. As we're a team here, and as a team, we care about each of our members. So if we can help you take that next step, support you, set the framework in place in terms of schools and housing and education and healthcare and all, you're part of the team. And there is that, if you will, family feeling under it as well. And that's just showing we can talk team all the time, but that's not how you build a team. It's got to be in the actions. And what Anna has described is just a perfect example of what it means for an organization to engage in true team-oriented behaviors.
Absolutely. And it is actually one of our stronger elements of the employee value proposition. And this is something that we advertise when we go out on university affairs, and we try to attract new talent into the firm. That's something that we always put out there because we know it is important, especially for the new generations. We all know that, they do want the international exposure. They want to travel, whether it is for family or for personal interest or professional development purposes. They do want to have that exposure. So this is a place where they can actually have that because, as you say, Kenya, we do care about them. And that's one very tangible way to demonstrate.
And the personal development, you almost get that for free. I mean, not for... when Philip sent these people all over the place, it was company initiated, so there were benefits that the company had to pay for. Here, it's self-initiated, so there's not going to be the same suite of benefits. So all of a sudden, you get some of what Philip talked about for free with your employee. Free, not literally, but for less cost. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
As an organization that has figured that out, that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There's this one to that point, and also building on Ken's point, I'm thinking about all of the different companies that I've worked for. And now that I'm in this new status that I'm in, how many of them, like Ken, you brought up the point, like where you said it's more than just a team, you feel like it's part of a family. And so there are people in this who I still am in touch with, because it's like a family, regardless, of the number of years that we might have worked together. And I'm not going to go through each of the companies, but one of the things that Steven brought up the other day, he talked about an article, of a person who just wrote something, and this guy and I, we've known each other for all of the 20-some years that we struggled together, right? Working our way up the corporate ladder. and we're still in touch, like family. Now, there's some other people that I can think of. I'm not in touch with them like that. It's almost like I left, and so the network, the sense of connection doesn't stay. And that's when you really have a team that, as a matter of fact, I can go on, on my Facebook or on my LinkedIn, and there are a few people who just are really part of that family, who carry that family feeling, who give me the sense of family feeling. Because one of the things that you talked about earlier, Kim, when you were talking about how you move from one place to another, and one of the things that you don't always have is that sense of belonging, which I think, like one of the reasons why I stay connected with Ed, is because of that sense of belonging that I get from the people that he involves in these sessions, and we'll go back and forth and up and down, but I still feel that sense of belonging, which is really critical. At least it's a part of one of the things that I value in life, being able to have that when you're not working with people, and it's not because we're on the same job struggling together, but we were struggling in life together, within an organizational framework, and so anyway, so I just wanted to bring that up. Sorry.
So we have about 6 minutes. So Philip,
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
may I ask you to tell us more and tell the audience out there in the world about the Louis Armstrong Foundation?
Well, it's interesting. The Louis Armstrong Foundation is in place in order to carry on the legacy of jazz that Louis Armstrong developed. And he was a global person. When I look at a number of the songs that he wrote and what he did, and also I look at how we're trying to revitalize, and the short piece of it, we're trying to revitalize the community and get people still interested in jazz, because it's a music form that has really helped to provide a lot of enthusiasm and energy for people. So that's without going. And so I'm on the board of directors now, and I'm the chairman of the HR committee. I'm also chairman of the investment committee. We started, and we just real quick on this, 30 seconds. We have an investment committee made up of all the, these different people. And so at the last meeting, we all talked about how happy we were in working with each other. I tell you, I've been on boards and stuff. You don't always get that type of feeling working with people where, we're working towards the same goal. We've developed a process where we have a shared sense of belonging, where we're able to listen to each other. As a matter of fact, the 7 elements that I talked about, I think that we have unconsciously gone through some of those elements in order to help to build us so that we can build the organization. So thanks for the opportunity to present that.
You bet. Okay, everybody, thank you for being on the show. Please come back. We have a number of projects developing, and I would welcome your voice. And if you have somebody in your network that you think should join this kind of conversation, and so please suggest. There's never a registration fee. Always looking for advertisers and sponsors and members, but we don't charge. There's no toll gate. We just want smart people and then people who want to learn, who could teach me something new. Anna, please come back.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you. Thanks for having
Okay.
me.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Have a great one.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.